Why would an otherworldly demon have its eyes trained on Steve Rogers? Well, let's hop into the pages of Captain America issue number 2 and find out together, shall we? So then, picking up directly from where the last issue had left off, we were treated to an untold tale of a young Steve Rogers when he was starving and briefly homeless on the streets of New York. In hopes of getting some food, Steve attended a political rally in the park, only to realize too late that this rally was being put on by the very real German-American Bund, a Nazi fan club that existed in America pre-World War II, but is perhaps best known to comic book historians as the real group that threatened the life of Jack Kirby, Captain America's co-creator back in the day. The Bund goes on an all-too typical Nazi shithead rant, blood purity, fatherland, tiny mustaches, only to have a young Steve heckle them every step of the way. Hey, how about all those countries you guys are invading that don't belong to you? You know, my Jewish friends are telling me about these concentration camps. What about them, huh? What makes this scene even more endearing, though, is that this is still very much young, pre-power Steve Rogers, the sort of guy who could never win a fight, knows full well that these Nazis are gonna kick his ass if he keeps talking, yet he keeps doing it anyway because even then he knew this was the right thing to do. Steve even has a funny little exchange with a nice old man on a bench who looks a lot like Stan Lee. Hey kid, you look terrible. Oh, you should have seen the other guy. Oh, I have looked at them. Geez kid, I don't think this is going near as well as you think it is. Now from there we transition on over to the present where we see that Travis Lane guy, the rich millionaire who is possessed by some otherworldly demonic force. Him and his AIM allies are setting up shop on a distant island like old-timey James Bond villains. Whatever they're doing is pretty damn clandestine too because they kill the guy who sold the island to them before filling it with some of the most advanced technology and coders this side of Stark Unlimited. Though as we soon learn, whatever they're doing on this island, it isn't your regular old run-of-the-mill mad science. They're working with strange sigils, arcane symbology of such dark power. One of the coders actually ends up taking his life by jumping from a tower on the island, but hey, you know what, we'll circle back to this in a minute. Back in the past, we see Steve manage to scrape together just enough money to get a roof over his head. Well, really, it's more like an old janitor's closet over his head, but at least it's got heat. This is also Steve Rogers' first run-in with one of New York's truly shitty landlords. This guy's perfectly fine taking Steve's money and giving him sub-adequate accommodations in a building that sounds like it's not only dangerous but mostly unfinished. If nothing else though, Steve does manage to make fast friends with Tiffany and some of the other women in the building by fixing the ladies' restroom, saying that after him and his mother lost his father, Steve had to get really good at fixing everything around the house, plumbing, cars, as they couldn't always afford a repairman to stop by. And back in the present, Steve continues to put those skills to good use as now he is officially running his old building and trying to get it nice and fixed up. Cap's DIY exploits though end up getting interrupted by Spider-Man, who hopes to recruit him to help take down the Sinister Six, who apparently have set up shop in Steve's neck of the woods. In a fun twist of fate, Spider-Man and Cap stake out a warehouse all night only to realize that the Six aren't showing up because Doc Ock's cousin has come to town, and so the bad guys, having lives of their own, have decided to postpone. Again, there's something just deeply hilarious about J. Michael Straczynski's big return to Spider-Man after all these years end up being a mission that doesn't happen. Now, back in the past, we see a secret meeting taking place between the leader of the German America Bund and two men who will end up becoming huge Captain America villains, Baron Strucker and Baron Zemo Sr. The assembled Nazi supervillains talk about how hard it is for them to try and gain a foothold in America as of late. Assassination attempts have mostly backfired on them, and by and large, many Americans just aren't buying what the Third Reich is selling right now, maybe because of the American idea of always rooting for the underdog. It's because of this they want to try and use some Reichstag tactics. They plan a massive terrorist attack against Madison Square Garden, in hopes that if they create enough chaos and crisis, then they can step on in and seem like the solution to this problem. Now, believe it or not, this issue also brings with it a pretty sweeping retcon, well, really more of a return to the continuity of old. You see, Steve meets up with his mom's old landlord, the guy who was actually nice enough to stow a bunch of Steve's effects in storage for him. This guy, we discover, is actually a Jewish refugee from Germany, as well as a friend of Steve's dad, apparently. This guy says that Steve's dad was good to him when he first came to the country, which is rare because he was normally used to just being met with anti-Semitism everywhere he went. This is pretty interesting because for the last decade or so worth of Captain America's stories, whenever they bring up up Steve's dad, they usually bring up that he was a drunk and a dirtbag. I mean, that could also be true on top of not being anti-Semitic. I just think it's interesting that this is like the one nice thing they've said about Steve's dad in years. Steve hangs his dad's old World War I medals on the wall, and later that night he hears two Hasidic gentlemen getting harassed in the streets by the same Nazis who beat him up at the park. Naturally, Steve doesn't think twice about swooping right on in to defend the two men in need, even though again he knows full well that he still weighs about 90 pounds soaking wet and he's probably going to be treated to another ass whooping. It's here Steve's good deeds though come back and reward him tenfold as Tiffany and a bunch of the other women in the building swoop to his defense. It seems that the ladies' toilet's backed up again, meaning that they're armed with buckets of human waste that they're able to use to douse the Nazis down below. Mein Gott, es regnet Scheiße! And with that, the day is saved in the past, but in the future, Captain America's troubles are only beginning as we once again check back on in with Travis Lane. Tonight, he's come to the home of a very strange loner auto mechanic who we in short order learn is actually a fairly prolific serial killer with at least 14 bodies under his floorboards. This guy's not dumb because he hasn't been caught yet, but moreover than that, he's pretty observant and realizes that Travis isn't exactly human. At first, he assumes that this demon is here to reap his soul, when in reality, it's actually Travis who wants this killer to go and reap someone's soul for him. You see, as the demon explains, there are people out there, special, important people who end up becoming agents of change. Your Martin Luther Kings, your Mahatma Gandhis, etc., etc. People who bring the world hope, people who bring the world together, which is just terrible for people in the demon's business. Used to be a time not so long ago when they'd have to search these people out the old-fashioned way, but thanks to the advent of technology, especially the technology provided by AIM, the demon can find his prey much easier. Why does the demon want these people dead on top of just being evil? Well, as Travis explains, their deaths create nexus points in history. Watershed moments that spur on great, irreparable change. And who is this newest agent of change that this demon has his eyes set on? Well, you won't be surprised at all to find out that it's none other than Steve Rogers, Captain America. And so that was Captain America issue number 2, everybody, and I'm happy to report that the first issue wasn't a fluke. J. Michael Straczynski continues to move along at a very deliberate, very confident pace, telling a story of Steve Rogers before powers, before costumes, when he was still every bit as heroic as he is now. If anything, Steve is more sympathetic, more relatable, and more likable in these flashbacks because you know full well that he's gonna get hurt, and yet he still continues to charge headlong into danger. Because damn it, it's the right thing to do, it's the heroic thing to do. Throw in some real-world history mixed with comic book history, and you actually have a really compelling cocktail. Hell, I'm even getting more and more sold on the big main overarching bad guy for this series basically just being a devil who has to fuse magic and technology to get what he wants, as well as influence other sick minds out there. Again, it's a good mix, and I'm interested to see where the story is going to go from here. Overall, I would give this one another very positive 8 out of 10. Hey there everyone, it's your pal Cape Joel again, and if you're seeing my face right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, and I'll always be grateful for that. Retention helps in this crazy YouTube game, and so does becoming a patron. If you head on down to the description, you can find a link to my Patreon page. Recently just redid all the tiers, a lot of cool stuff offering up there, exclusive commentaries, exclusive polls, behind the scenes concept art for Capes and Quest. That's the brand new D&D show I've started soon. Never been a better time to become a patron. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month and help the channel grow and, help me continue to deliver content like what you just saw. So I want to thank you all, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.